It is, I think, the roughest land I ever saw. But this is to be our city, they say. Sarah Frost.
I climbed to the top of Chipman's Hill and watched the sails disappear. Although I had not shed a tear throughout all the war, I sat down on the damp moss with my baby in my lap and cried. Sarah Tilley.
The flood of refugee loyalists that lands on the shores of Nova Scotia nearly triples the population overnight. The Caldwells and the Dodds, the Mackays, the Moodys, the Thompsons. Surveyors frantically lay out town sites and homesteads. But as fleet after fleet brings new arrivals, John Parr, the colony's governor, is overwhelmed.
A considerable number of refugee families, destitute of almost everything, must be provided for, chiefly women and children, as I have not yet been able to find any sort of place for them, and the cold setting in severe.
20,000 refugees flood into the coastal towns of Yarmouth, Annapolis Royal, Antigonish. Whole communities spring up where nothing existed before. Many spend their first winter in tents or crowded into army barracks, surviving on rations doled out from street kitchens.
I hired a hovel for $40 a year, and in this wretched abode we remained for several weeks. I purchased a town lot, commenced building, and opened a small store of goods. In October, we got into our new dwellings as happy as princes. But my poor wife suffered greatly from the dampness of the walls, and on the 9th of January, 1785, was delivered of a dead son.
Stephen Jarvis joins the wave of new settlers that spread up the St. John River, creating the towns of St. John, Queenston, Gagetown, and Fredericton. It is here that Hannah Ingraham's family settles. They spent their first winter in tents, but by spring, Hannah's father has built their first rough home.
There was no floor laid, no windows, no door, but we had a roof at least. A good fire was blazing, and Mother boiled a kettle of water. We all sat at our breakfast that morning, and Mother said, "Thank God we are no longer in danger of having shots fired through our house. This is the sweetest meal I ever tasted."
Hannah Ingraham never married and never left Fredericton. She lived to be 97, long enough to see the beginning of the age of photography. The exodus of Loyalists continues through the summer and fall of 1783. At the port of Roseway, there are sometimes upwards of 30 ships unloading their human cargo. A few miles away, on a rocky, desolate stretch of shoreline, the largest free black settlement on the continent has begun. But most of the black loyalists in Birchtown never get the land or the provisions the British promised. When the blacks take menial jobs in nearby Shelburne, white workers start riots and drive them out. They have escaped one kind of slavery only to face another.
Many of my black brethren were obliged to sell themselves to the merchants, some for 2 or 3 years, others for 5 or 6 years. Several fell down dead in the streets through hunger, Some killed and ate their dogs and cats. Poverty and distress prevailed on every side, so that, to my great grief, I was compelled to leave Birchtown.
In January 1792, Boston King and 1,200 other black loyalists board a fleet of ships hired by the Sierra Leone Company. They leave to join a new colony of free blacks in West Africa, though they continue to call themselves Nova Scotians. But despite the hardships, most of the black loyalists chose to stay and put down roots. Former slaves became landowners and builders. It was another 40 years before slavery was formally abolished in British North America. By then, a generation of black loyalist descendants had grown up in Nova Scotia as free men and women.